And welcome back to Liquid Lunch. It's me, Hugh, and Hildegard is here, and we're hitting the home stretch, and we are going to have a fantastic conversation right now because we've got Audwin Trapman joining us here. And Hildegard, why don't you just introduce Audwin for us?
Well, I'm so privileged to have you here,
Thank
sir.
you.
We're talking about curses, hexes, spells, including the ones we put ourselves under, if you believe that or not, but I do.
Absolutely.
And how we keep ourselves trapped, and you are there to untrap us and how to take the monsters out of the closet. So welcome, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here.
Audwin, how did you get onto this path and now sharing your gift so publicly with everybody?
Oh, well, that took a bit of courage to come out and share it publicly. That's true.
Well, congratulations on that, because I think many of us are still in the closet in that regard.
It's not something that people acknowledge very easily out there. Until somebody actually lives this topic, they don't have a first-hand understanding of it, so it's more of a concept to them, which they can either accept or deny, and society tends to deny it. So they join forces in that way.
So Audwin, you got public about it, but what happened? What was your life like before that pointed you in this direction?
Well, that's a good question. It basically didn't give me much choice on the matter. Since I was a teenager, I've had ghosts around me. Every house that I've ever lived in had ghosts in it, basically. And I could feel them and I could sense them, and they interacted with me. So of course I started off being terrified of them. That's a natural response. You don't know what's going on. You really have no clue. There's no one to talk to about it that can share the experience with you or give you some pointers. So you end up going into fear. So I spent many years actually just being plain afraid of them.
So do you see them, hear them? Do they drop something? Is there noise? How do you perceive your ghosts?
Well, mostly with interactions. So a lot of knocking would go on, the footsteps, the doors closing, just paranormal activity. I had chandeliers swinging in one of my houses that I lived in. We had a birdcage chandelier that was this tall, literally, and it was hanging from the ceiling by chain, and it would do swings this large. And then I would stand there just watching it, and then I'd say, okay, now change direction, and it would literally wrench itself around and go back in the other direction. So when you have events like that are undeniable, you're seeing it, you're experiencing it.
So you knew you were dealing with intelligence. Your mind didn't make this up because you asked it to do the other turn and it followed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good for you. Wow.
So that was actually fairly common. I also had fires start in the fireplace, just poof, that kind of thing would go on as well. So
thank goodness it was in the fireplace.
Yeah, well, I think they were conscious of the risk. So I think ultimately that the ghosts that were around me were there to help me open spiritually, because I had to go through a growth paradigm where I started off being afraid, and then it became, okay, maybe they're not out to get me. Then it became, okay, they're actually trying to help me, and then it's how are they trying to help me, and then it became, how can I help them? Because ultimately my journey was to bring me to become a healer, where I could help ghosts move on, where I could remove the curses, hexes, and spells that we end up getting polluted by. So I think my lifelong path was literally to get me to this place where I could do this kind of work. And they were instrumental in bringing me step by step along that path.
So now let's just go back a little.
Okay.
You mentioned hexes, curses, and spells we are polluted by. Now let's talk about the world that Audwin sees.
Okay.
The world that is polluted with things, entities. Let's call them entities because they're not things you can see,
right.
Entities we cannot see.
Right.
And how it came about then that you actually interacted and learned how you could help them and how they were helping you. Like how did that come about?
Oh, well, again,
so you notice they light the fire, they're swirling the chandeliers.
Yeah.
Now what's next?
Well, it became my own personal life again, where I had to literally experience the curses, hexes, and spells. I had to experience negative entities. I had to experience disharmony. I had to experience the psychic trauma. My whole family experienced the psychic trauma. I'm divorced now. I attribute it to my lesson that I had to go through to learn about entities and how they can manipulate people emotionally, energetically, take control of our physical bodies even if they wanted to, and it literally destroyed my marriage. That I know. But ultimately I know that it was a tremendous learning experience for me. So even though I went through, I consider it sheer hell, I thank my journey because now I'm able to help other people.
So
So
a
what are the
6-year-old possessed with an entity jumping on a table like this with a normal 6-year-old couldn't do, like a monkey, that is real, right?
Oh yes, that's
Okay,
real.
perfect.
Absolutely.
So what are these entities, and what is a negative entity versus a non-negative entity?
Anything that's non-benevolent, anything that's not after our highest and best interest is negative in my mind.
Okay.
I work with angels. That's my primary method because they can literally go in there and work and see, and they know everything. We don't have to figure anything out. So if I ask them what's the nature of this spirit that's interfering or affecting that person's life, and they show me that it's a negative, non-benevolent, then I consider it negative and it needs to go. But there are other positive forces out there that actually come to help us, and they would quite likely be allowed to stay because they're helping people.
And are those some of the angels that you're working with?
Angels would be definitely benevolent. Yeah.
So,
Did you see them? Did you hear them? You
I
mentioned
hear them.
knocking.
Yeah, I don't have the vision
Oh, you are auditory as well.
and knowingness. That's my sign. But I also have the pendulum. I use a pendulum for some answers as well. But one of the things that I am thankful for is that I don't see them, because I deal with so much negativity, helping so many people day in, day out, that if I had to see these things in front of me all the time as I worked, it would take the fun out of my life. And this way I get to do the work. I don't see the drama that's being unfolded, and I can remain in a nice, peaceful, happy state.
so where do they come from, and who are they, and where do they go when you're finished dealing with them?
Well, they go to the light.
Okay.
They sometimes are given the chance to move on. If the angels tell me that these particular spirits can move on, then we give them the choice of moving on their own volition, on their own cognizance, and they can just leave. But if they don't, then they have to be taken away for rehabilitation, counseling, or they can ultimately be brought up and recycled if they're really evil. They can go through quite literally a vortex that will take them in one side and bring out neutral energy on the other. That's fairly, how do you call that, severe.
Right.
So it's not that often that happens.
So tell me about the hierarchy in the invisible world then. From what I heard you say is that there's entities with different evolutionary stages.
That's right.
There may be a grade 1 or a grade 10 or whatever.
Yep.
Some people know the rules better and stick to them better than others.
Exactly. So there's a hierarchy in the spiritual realm. Most people know that the angels have a hierarchy where they have dimensions and consciousness that the angels operate under. The same is true for the entities. You can have a really low-level entity which really doesn't have much consciousness. It's just like an amoeba. It's just doing its thing without really understanding. But then you can get entities that have a consciousness where they actually are aware of what they're doing.
And it could be bad.
And they are definitely bad.
Yeah.
They're trying to interfere with your life. They're trying to take your energy, and they basically are after their own ends. And then you get entities which are quite evil. Evil being a word that a lot of people disagree with, but there are entities that are quite in there to harm you and hurt you. My experience is that people who have a tendency to commit suicide, for example, are plagued with entities that are pushing them literally to commit suicide.
Well, we had people from mystical schools here before, and I remember one gentleman saying the universe being a dualistic universe.
Yes.
The higher up you go on the one side, what the negative or the opposite end is deeper and therefore more severe as well. So you
Yeah.
better arm yourself with knowledge, which what
Yeah.
the mystical school this particular person was talking about was all about.
Exactly.
Enlightening people about the invisible world.
That's right.
Informing the visible, and if you don't know about it, then they can yo-yo around.
Yeah, so easily too. So the expression "as above, so below" is true. Everything that we have above, that we also have below. So we have angels of light up above. We also have angels of darkness down below, which also are quite powerful and interfere with our lives. So we really do ourselves a disservice if we only acknowledge this part, the light part. Until we acknowledge the dark part, we're literally closing our ears and eyes, and we're pretending that it doesn't exist, and that's when they can literally push us around very easily, because we just disregard all the negative things that are happening to us as saying, oh, that's just luck or something, and we don't find the root cause of it.
Does that mean that when bad things happen, that there are negative entities involved?
Yes, I'd say right across the board,
all
it's
the
hard
time.
not to find negative entities associated with any kind of negative experience. if you go to a prison, for example, and you look at all the prisoners, I can guarantee you that anyone that's guilty would have entities associated with them that push them in those directions. It's the same with alcoholism, any kind of addiction, be it smoking or anything. There's an entity there that is trying to get their own perverse satisfaction out of it, to either drain the energy or to literally take control of the human being to achieve their own ends.
Now, are these real entities? I mean, people talk
yes.
about thought forms.
Yes, there's also thought forms.
And I mean, what's the difference?
Stuck souls, like somebody passed away and expected on the other side God to come and milk and honey to flow.
Yeah.
Like I had that happen in a car. I didn't know any of these things. I was driving in a car, and my next door neighbor, I lived in Northumberland County then, was talking to me. It was like he's sitting there like you sitting, and I didn't know what's going on. And he's saying, and why is there no God? And why is God? And he was going on and on. And then when I got to my friend's house in Coburg, she said, oh my God, you look like you've seen a ghost. I said, oh yeah.
Who wouldn't stop talking?
Yeah, and so she was, like she reads tarot cards and she was more evolved in those directions. And she says, no, this is real. And this gentleman apparently had just passed the day before and I didn't know.
Yeah, well, that happens a lot.
So lost soul, or how do you call those?
Oh yes, definitely lost souls, because what people believe manifests in the afterlife. So if you believe in heaven and hell, or you believe in a dogmatic religious philosophy that means you're going to get punished, then that's what your belief is going to create for you as soon as you pass over.
Right.
If you don't believe in anything at all, then you're going to be sitting there kind of wondering what's going on. And if you believe that you're not dead, then you also would be sitting there wondering what's going on or trying to interact with us because you haven't clicked that you should be looking for the light or whatever the mode of transport is that's going to be brought to you to bring you over to the other side. So it is quite possible for people to get stuck. So ghosts are literally human beings who have not moved on. And then
So this is energetic essences of what once animated the body, being no longer aware of how they fit into where they are.
Yes, because the soul descends into the body, a small portion of the soul. Our souls are actually enormous, but we have a small portion that comes into our body and it leaves upon death, and that's the part that gets waylaid, essentially.
Did you see the movie with Whoopi Goldberg and Patrick Swayze, Ghost?
Oh, Ghost, yes. Oh, yeah.
What an awesome movie.
I saw Ghost Dad with Bill Cosby, but that was different.
Oh, I didn't see that. Now, when somebody comes to you, what is it generally, without compromising your confidentiality, but what are the issues that people are dealing with and come to see you?
Oh, well, most of them have no doubt whatsoever that they're being affected. Typically, the average person will fight it for years before they say, okay, I guess I have no other choice. I've examined every other option. I've been to psychiatrists, I've been to doctors, I've been to my priest, I've been to everybody, and I still have the problem. So I tried to go the conventional route. Now I have to start looking at the alternate route, and then that's when they come to me very often to get the help. And then there's other people who just know right off the bat that, yes, they have a ghost. Like, they don't pretend that it's not there. They just acknowledge it right from the beginning, and they might be bothered for a week or two instead of years before they receive help.
So let's go back to the little 6-year-old who sleeps nicely in bed and suddenly turns into this wild tiger, jumping down 12 flights of steps.
Wow.
Just from the top to the bottom. The kid is this high. What do you recommend to people when stuff like that happens?
Oh, well.
Like, I have a story around that myself, but just to give you the scenario, right?
Well, the child would definitely be having entity possession issues.
Yeah,
like that's a full-blown possession. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, you mentioned earlier about the priests, right? People have been to their priests and stuff like that, and I've read stories where the Catholic Church goes and does
the
exorcisms, right? Now, I mean, does that tie into the work that you do, or do you have to
quite substantially? Unfortunately, though, they don't have a very good track record. Like, I don't want to badmouth them at all, but they put out a movie called The Possession or Exorcism in the 21st Century, and I watched it, and they showed their best exorcists in that film, and they showed several people having exorcisms, but they show the main character is not having successful exorcisms. So literally after 2 hours, the main characters still were possessed, and they're still, writhing on the ground, screaming in tongues, and not having success. So It's this.
I think I saw
Actually,
that movie.
I'm just going to say something weird because I had a weird dream last night where I was actually trying to conduct an exorcism in my dream. Is that weird? That's weird. What does that mean?
Well, maybe you're in training.
I don't know.
Yes. Really. Well, but let me tell you what happened with my little one.
Okay.
He was like 6 years old. I just intuitively called for whoever is coming from the light. That much I already knew,
Yeah.
but not more. And then they said, make an imaginary purple light circle. Ask that entity. It obviously is not from the light, or else it wouldn't possess this body. And
Yeah.
as a parent, one has control until they're grown. It's my responsibility to keep the body and the spirit safe, so to speak. So I was told to just command this entity to the purple light.
Right.
My left brain was thinking, yeah, that's a bunch of bullcrap. How's that going to fix it? But I was
Yeah.
told, hug him, hold on for dear life, because as that energy leaves, the child is back to sleeping and he can get hurt.
Yes.
So if you extract that essence on the way down the staircase, for instance, the child could break their leg or something worse could happen.
Oh yes. Yeah.
So it doesn't
People
make
do
sense
get
to you?
hurt
Like
all
it
the time.
worked. It worked amazingly.
Oh, that makes perfect sense to me.
And mom and of course I went through divorce at some point as well. And when the kids would go back to dad's house, at some point I remember dad calling me and saying, "Do your thing. I don't know what it is, but please
Yeah.
do your thing."
Yeah. Well, it's beneficial or really excellent that you were aware enough to be able to take action like that. Most people don't have those tools.
Well, I didn't know. I hear a lot,
yeah,
right?
you
And
went
I
with the
just
guidance.
ask for somebody smarter
Yeah.
than me to help me out.
Yeah, most people
Angel
don't
or
have
whatever.
that gift or that skill, so they end up living with the problem. And I've literally had people come to me who've been plagued for 10 years, if not their entire lifetimes, because they just didn't know what to do about it. So these things are removable. You can be healed. What I like to do is actually heal the soul as well, because on some level, the entities or the ghosts had permission to interact with the person. If our protection is fully in place and our aura is whole and complete, there's no holes in it, and we don't have any past life issues, then it's very hard to be approached or to be infiltrated by ghosts or entities. So what I like to do is heal the root cause reasons of why the vulnerability was there in the first place, so that the person, the human being, can go out into society and go into buildings, go wherever they want, and not have to worry about picking things up.
So do you think then if a child is like that and the parent doesn't clue in, he could have just continued on being
Oh, yes.
pushed around by this energy?
Absolutely. A lot of these things carry on lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, where the person would die, be born again with the entity again, and go through another lifetime, and keep on doing that lifetime after lifetime after lifetime until. And it's the same with curses, hexes, and spells. They energetically bind to us, and we keep them for many generations.
Well, let's talk about those for a minute, because it sounds to me like a hex is usually something, or a spell or a curse is something that somebody puts on another person.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, a hex is essentially a low-grade curse, where someone is just sort of randomly wishing ill on someone. But if you have someone who sits down and consciously focuses intent on somebody, and really, puts their willpower, like they really squeeze that willpower and they make it stick, then that is definitely a curse. They have been labeled and energetically had something attached to them. And then typically that would also attract entities who are working with that. So it's not just a curse, it's an entity-backed curse.
Right.
So
there's a certain vibration and everything is looking for vibration or energy.
That's right.
And then it resonates and then everything else flocks to make it then this big whatever.
Exactly.
Now, how do you tell that if somebody came to you and maybe they're just having a bad luck streak, how do you actually identify that there is a curse, and then how do you act to remove it?
Well, the first I ask them is, tell me your life story, because the life story really does reveal a lot about what they've been going through. And they usually say that they've tried everything and everything failed. And things would look like they're about to succeed, and then without any reason, randomly they would fail, just be cut off. And often these people are destitute. They really don't have any resources left anymore. It could be that they're even isolated, their family has turned their back on them. Like their energy has become so negative that what they put out turns people off. Even their friends have typically turned their back on them because it is so powerful.
Wow.
So when you clear all that stuff off, they notice that their friends start to re-engage, the family starts to re-engage, and then life starts to go easy again. And that, the true life experience tells you before and after. Okay, before I was like this, after I'm like this, yeah, there's no doubt I had stuff that was affecting my energy.
And do you bring the angels in to help in situations
I bring
like
the
that?
angel, yeah, in every situation.
Now, how do we know? Because people talk about, whether it's a channeled entity or a personality, or even when people talk about angels, even when you think about somebody like John of God and the entities that he works with to heal people, some people say, all those entities really are not to be trusted. Right. Can you comment about that a little bit?
Yes, I would agree with that, actually, in the sense that we all have to be very discerning on who we're working with. A lot of healers and a lot of people going to healers don't ask who the source energy is that they're working with, and they just assume that because healing is taking place, that it is coming from God or from the light. But the thing is that the dark has angels, the dark has their own healing energies. The as above, so below also works for healing energies too. So you can go to somebody who's either knowingly or unknowingly working with dark energies or dark angels and receive healing. The problem is that when you do so, those forces of darkness will also attach contracts, vows, oaths, allegiances, ownership of you, basically is what they're after. Your soul is now mine because I healed you. This is the kind of thing that takes place on a soul level. So you do receive the physical benefit of health, but at the same time, you're bound by all this negative energy that it does take the form of contracts.
So how do you know then, if you're working with these angelic beings, that they're on the good side, that they're not going to try to take ownership of somebody?
Absolutely, good question. I had to spend years and years and years clearing myself of the darkness, because I literally was one of these people who started off with the dark energies. And my journey has taken me to the point now where I realize that pretty well everybody starts off with the darkness. Because when we had our separation from God moment, we split from God and we became these individual human beings, we literally felt abandoned by God, because the purpose was to find out what it's like to not be light. So the only beings around were the dark. The light was gone. All we had was dark. So literally we had to go through our first initial 100 plus lifetimes being friends with the dark. Everybody goes through that same journey. And then as we go through that journey, our task is to reacquaint ourselves with the light and to bring ourselves back to the light. And the way we do that is to basically thank the dark for all that they've done for us, to keep us friends, or to be our friends, to show us our path, and to keep us protected in some cases. But ultimately we have to leave them behind and move to the light. And then as we move to the light, then we have to do the healing of ourselves to remove the contracts, the vows, oaths, the allegiances, and all the things that bind us to them, to the darkness. And then after we've released all that stuff, then we can start to bring ourselves closer to the light. So it's a progression that we have to do.
So it's a natural process. Everybody goes through that.
Exactly.
And then as you bring your energy up, you'll notice health, different kind of life circumstance show up.
That's right.
Like, can people protect themselves with a regimen of prayer or faith?
Absolutely. I work with prayer with all my clients and myself. Every day I say my prayers to bring in the light, to clear off the darkness. I also do an exercise to raise my vibration, because a low vibration, that's where the dark resides. A high vibration is where the light resides. So by bringing in the energy to raise your vibration, you literally take your physical body up a notch or several notches to where the dark can't be. And that's one of the greatest ways to protect yourself. And that's on my website as well. It's called Raising Your Vibration.
So that's cool. So we're going to give out the website in a minute. But I just want to ask another question. So what's happening in the world? I mean, I don't know if that's even in your area of expertise.
I think I could offer a humble opinion on it.
Yeah.
Are you talking politically, or?
Well, I just mean, is the planet going through an enlightenment or
Yes.
something?
Are we stuck in the mud?
No, I don't see us as being stuck in the mud. I know there's lots of bad things that are going on out there, and there is some fear that people have about what's going on there. But all of that serves a purpose, just as when I was younger and I was going through all these ghost visitations and I had to go through the fear process to awaken my gifts, the earth is also going through fear process, because every time we have something bad happen, it awakens us, quite literally. We get jolted out of our somnambulance, basically, and we look for something better. So even though we do have all these nasty events going on out there, it is bringing up our consciousness.
So every bad thing, or even any bad entity, is actually serving us, serving our higher good.
There's a gift in everything.
Politically,
Wow. Yeah.
we could say, a lot of what's going on in Canada, let's say, on the world stage, we all deserve
Yes.
that which we have chosen on one way or another.
That's right.
Without getting into an argument whether the
Yes.
system is right or not.
Yeah.
So, but as we grow consciously, I think then even our government and everything must switch, because
yes.
the populace resonates on a different frequency, right?
That's exactly right.
Just following what you were saying earlier.
That's right. When we're dissatisfied with how the government behaves, and they're basically disrespect to the rules that they're supposed to be following, then that aggravates us, and it makes us realize what we should be aiming for, and it opens up our consciousness even greater, so that the government will end up playing catch up to stay up with us. Instead of them leading us, we're leading the government.
Interesting thought, even though nobody more would go and vote, but simply by us shifting our energy, it will.
Oh, it's inevitable.
Right.
And that's literally going on across Canada, it's going on across the United States, it's going on across the world. If you look at the rates of murder and other crime, they're all going down approximately 20% right across the board worldwide. And that's because, yes, as we have these nasty things happen, our consciousness is being raised, and we're choosing better. We're choosing to have a higher consciousness world.
And so we just got to wait till that breaks through on the macro level, right?
Absolutely.
When's that going to happen?
Well, let's get to watching.
Audwin, it's been great to have you on, actually.
Thank you very much.
I wish we
It's
could
been a real pleasure.
keep talking all day about this stuff, because it's
We'd love to have
fascinating.
you back, and we'll
I'd enjoy that. Thank you
address
so much.
some specific issues.
So people can go to the website, which is, what is it, Audwin?
Lovehealsall.ca.
Lovehealsall.ca, and we're going to actually show that site as we go out on the show today. And lovehealsall.ca.
That's an awesome note to part ways on this afternoon.
Yeah, let's
Wonderful.
all
Thank
go out
you
and have
so
a great
much.
weekend now.
Absolutely.
All right? Okay, Audwin,
you so
thank you.
much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Hildegard.
Appreciate it.
And we'll see you all next time right here on thatchannel.com. Thanks, everybody. See you then.